Tight right, Quinn Clark wide left, Barney motions far left. Out of the gun, Latif takes the low snap, handoff Nelson. Starts right, cuts back left, has a lane, 35-30, 25-20, left side numbers. Nelson is gone! Touchdown, Huskers! What a start! Makai Nelson, 38 yards to the house. I'd like to take a moment. Utah, one of the better red zone teams in the country from the two. Straight eyes, snap. They bootleg it right. Center step Dampier turns the edge, and he rides Elijah Judy to the half-yard line. His helmet went flying as he faked to give a naked bootleg out to the right. He was chopping his feet. He thought he got in. His helmet came off, but Judy brought him down at the half-yard line. So Dampier's going to have to come out for Hogan.
The ruling is touchdown. The runner's knee was in the air with the ball across the goal line. It'll be a try for Utah.
It definitely felt great, but I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it without my offensive lineman, without my receivers blocking. But, this is just something that I've been waiting for, since I got here, being able to show everybody what I could do. So definitely scoring, especially scoring the first touchdown, that felt great.
First of all, credit to Utah. I thought number 4, the quarterback, was spectacular. We've seen him all year. He's done that versus everybody. We thought we did a good job for the first 3 quarters, really stopping the run. But unfortunately, a lot of the routes in the passing game, pass defense, they defended us pretty well. Phil Snow stepped in and try to do a really great job for us. He could have stuck with some of the stuff we did all year long. Really got us a kind of a kickstart into being a 4-down quarters team for next year. And so we had some kind of miscommunications at times. We're just not quite playing fast enough in the passing game. I think that we thought that was the best thing for us to do moving forward was to start really kind of on what Coach Orich wants to do for us as we move forward.
Hi, welcome to Severely Delayed Reaction here on 1620 The Zone, 402-951-1620. We are days away from when Nebraska lost 44-22 to Utah. But you know what? We're going to look back a little bit at that game. Also, look ahead to the next season. Talk about what Matt Rhule just said right there, looking ahead, moving forward. What's next for the University of Nebraska's football program in a situation right now where, for many of us, it's a case of deja vu all over again. I am Michael Severe, host of Severe Reaction. Peter Krenzer is the producer this morning. Few people have gone through more ups and downs in his football year than Nebraska fans and Peter. Peter, a fan of the Indianapolis Colts, who had a meteoric rise this season behind a Daniel Jones-inspired quarterback play, and then he tore his Achilles, and then someone knocked on Peter's door and said, oh, by the way, your starting quarterback is going to be Phillip Rivers. What? Excuse me? And he had some exciting 3 games with Phillip Rivers, and now Phillip Rivers is retired again.
If there was ever a roller coaster ride of a season, I have lived it, and then some.
You have lived the roller coaster of emotion, without a doubt about that.
But wow, crazy. That first half of the season, what fun that was.
You'll always have the first half of the 2025 season. You'll always have it. Nebraska will have another 7-6 season. It's arranged differently than it was last year, but for the most part, it's the same. We're going to go over some of the numbers comparing last year to this year and where they got better and where they didn't get better and where they took major steps backwards. We'll talk about the Utah loss. We'll get into some of that. Truly a New Year's Eve beatdown. I think many of us expected it. I think I picked 38-20 on Big Red Wrap-Up. I think that's what I picked. I'm kind of close. And we'll talk about heading into year 4 with Matt Rhule. Again, 402-951-1620. If you want to talk about the Utah game, that's fine. If you want to talk about the season, that's fine. If you want to look ahead to next year, if you want to talk portal, we got some portal stuff we're going to get to a little bit later. Kind of put some stuff in order of what we need, what Nebraska needs and what we need to cover. But I always kind of have a theme. And I don't always talk about it on the show, but I always kind of put the top of my rundown, like the theme for the show, just so I can remember to go back to it. And this theme that I had been thinking about for the last couple of days is a failed promise. 2025 in the end was a failed promise. And I understand why people are upset and why this season has people angrier than last year. I was looking through my podcast, and they have the podcast and the title, and the podcast for yesterday for Mitch Sherman and Connor Happer's podcast was, why is everybody so angry? And that answer is easy. People are angry because they were promised certain things this year and they didn't get it. Do you remember when you were, 5, 6 years old, and in your mind, Santa promised you something, and then Christmas morning, you went and opened up the gifts and it wasn't there because Santa didn't bring it? Remember that feeling you had? Well, amplify that by being a grown-up, having to have covered this team. Me personally, I've been here now 23 years covering this team, and I don't ever remember a season, and there's a bunch of them that kind of fit this, but that had a bigger promise from the head coach, from the front office, from the field, everywhere, a promise that this is what you were going to get this year. You were promised a year 3 bump, right? That you were promised that. You were told every time Matt Rule, Temple, Baylor, now Nebraska, 3rd-year bump. You're promised that. You were promised Dylan Raiola, year 2, with an offseason where he trained and got in better shape and did all these things. You were going to get a big jump from him. And a big reason for it was the portal promise, the PP. You know what? PP can be portal promise or just, stuff raining onto you that's kind of warm. PP is not always good. And you were told that with the wide receivers that were coming in, with the help on the offensive line, with numerous guys who weren't necessarily named guys on the defensive line coming in, one of the leading tacklers from lower division coming in at linebacker, all of that, you were promised those guys were going to come in here and help get Nebraska over the hump along with a year 3 jump. And that's an 0 for 3, 0 for 4 in promises. So I get it. I understand being upset. You can go back to November 1st. November 1st, Nebraska's got USC in their house. They're winning the game. It looks like they're going to get a big win. And, of course, Dylan Raiola goes down on what is still one of the weirder plays that Nebraska's run. You know that a lot of people had expectations for Dana Holgorsen coming in. And you were going to see all kinds of creative stuff, especially after the season where he had 4 games under his belt. Then he could go into the lab, figure out what worked well, put together a game plan and run it, right? That's what you were expecting. And you were expecting all this. You were expecting what you saw on Wednesday night from Utah, the different formations, the different ways of getting the ball to your playmakers, using your quarterback to his best of his abilities. You expected that. So you get in that USC game and you have all this expectation. And that play call is still, I don't want to blame it all on Dylan Raiola, but that was a audible or adjustment that he made that in the end got him hurt. On that play, they only had 2 wide receivers or 2 possible receivers. You're max protecting. You've got 2 receivers in the pattern, right? Staying back is your tight end is in to block on one side. Your other tight end is to block on the boundary side. And you've got your running back there to protect your blind side in Emmett Johnson. 2 guys in the route. That's it. You take the snap and you look at option 1, option 2. That's it. That's all that's there. So what do you do at that point? Well, you live to fight another day. You maybe move the pocket a little bit to the right, throw the ball into the ground, overthrow a wide receiver, whatever you want. However you want to get rid of the ball, you get rid of the ball. But Dylan Raiola did what Dylan Raiola does and stood there in the pocket and just held onto the ball. Now, Emmett gets beat, comes back, really holds the guy. But the real problem is on the front side of it, you have a defensive lineman or a linebacker who delayed blitzes The tight end on that side doesn't get the block. The guy's coming into Dylan's view. At that point, again, get rid of the ball, but he doesn't, holds on to it, tries to stand up, gets pulled back by the guy who finally gets around Emmett, and, of course, the broken fibula happens. I have a little bit of experience in this. When I tore my ACL, it was a thing where I thought I could just stand there and then got pulled down the wrong way and my ACL tore. So I kind of understand that. But, I was a sophomore in high school. I didn't have all the experience that Dylan had. That ball's got to come out. It is a perfect example of the things that people got so upset about when it came to Dylan Raiola. There was nothing there. Instead of getting rid of the ball, or for some people taking off running, there was really no lane. But, you run into, just try to get back to the line of scrimmage as much as you can, maybe lose a yard, lose 2 yards, opposed to getting sacked. That was one of the things that Nebraska fans were so critical of. And it's the thing in the end that ended his season and ended his time with Nebraska. That play should go down, and, maybe they put a picture of that play up. If everything goes well for Nebraska going forward, you can say, hey, that's where everything changed. That's where everything changed, that particular play. But in the end, you had to watch 3 losses by a combined 121-48. That's not good. 121-48.
Not ideal.
I just want to tell you. They got outscored in the second half of those games 50-15. They got out-yarded by average 442-320 and got outrushed 223-174 per game. Got basically dominated. That's what they got, dominated. But with all the promises and things that didn't work out, the portal promise, the year 3 promise, the Dylan Raiola promise, all of that, I do have some sobering news for you, because I know there's some people who are looking, and I saw it a lot on social media, and looking for the end of the Matt Rhule run. He's not going anywhere. This is where you are. No matter what happens in 2026, he's back. I can't think of anything that happens in 2026 that somehow gets someone out of the woodwork to pay some $70 million for him to go away. That's not happening. You can get angry with him. You can doubt him. You can do all of those things, and I understand all of that. He's not going anywhere. This is your head coach. This is your head coach for this offseason, for next year, and going forward. He's already changed coordinators. There's a Connor and Mitch do this thing where they talk about DEF CON, the state of war that we're at, or peace, depending on what side you're on. And in that, you talk about what leads to going from DEF CON 5 down to DEF CON 1. And you kind of add things up. Do we have subs in the Pacific? Are the tubes flooded? Are the doors open? Are they closed? Are the planes that need to be in the air, all that stuff. And in this situation, all of those things that lead up to DEF CON 1 in football, you fire your coordinators, all 3 of your coordinators relieved of their duties at some point in the last 2 years. You fired your offensive line coach and your defensive line coach. And now you're going to do something completely different from what you expected to do when you got here in 2023. If you go back and you listen to the press conferences and what Matt Rhule talked about for building this team, it was not a deep dive and heavy acquisition in the portal. It was not. What they're going to have to do now are those things. If they want to get over the top, they're going to have to go deep into the portal and spend a bunch of money, which is not what he talked about. Remember, this is a program that with the chance to bring in a local running back last year to support their running back room, they decided we're going to get outbid. We're going to let Miami have him. We're going to let them have Marty Brown. When there was chances to get some defensive linemen and it came to a bidding war, they decided, nope, we're not getting that bidding war. Same thing happened on the offensive line. Even though they brought in 2, they probably could have used a third, somebody to play right tackle. and they got outbid. We're not spending that money. We have a budget. Well, the budget talk is gone. Now it's desperation. Now we've got to figure out a way to fulfill the promises. Got to figure out a way to get people back on our side. And he's done everything he can, all the things leading up to now the buck stops here. You're the head coach. You've made multiple excuses. And I know there's a difference between excuses and fact, but he's made multiple of either one of those. And now he's in a situation where he's got to make something happen because there's nothing else to do. You already fired your coordinators. You already removed your offensive line coaches. You've got new personnel people in to help you. You're going deep into the portal. You got all of that. There's nothing else left than, as you know, Bo Pelini always talked about, pointing the thumb. That's all that's left. That is all that's left at this point. And what happens over the next 2 weeks are going to really make a huge difference. And then what happens in the spring and what happens in the fall. And when they get into that schedule, which we'll go over a little bit later, when they get into that, from that point on, it's Matt Rule and Matt Rule alone that's standing in front of the firing squad because there's nothing else he can do. This is it. The show is brought to you, of course, by Equitable Bank. Brought to you by Equitable Bank, where we take banking personally, and brought to you by Nebraska Medicine. Join our team at nebraskamed.com/careers, 402-951-1620. If you want to talk about the Utah game, which we're going to get into next, and the big turning point in that game, because there was a turning point. We'll get into that. If you want to talk about the whole season overall or looking ahead to 2026, we can do that as well. Coming up at 9 o'clock, we'll chat one more time with Stephen M. Sipple, get his take on what he thinks about the way the things are going right now in the portal. And we'll look back at, where they got better this year and where they got worse based off of numbers and rankings as well. All that coming up here on Severe Reaction when we come back here on 1620 The Zone.
Fourth down and inches. Latif out of the gun. Ives single back left. Snap, turn, handoff. Ives up the middle. Powers, backpedals. First down to the 47 of Nebraska. A big Medica first. Clock churns. 5:20 in the first. First and goal from the 8. Out of the gun. Latif single back right. Barney the motion man gets the jet sweep. Toss from left to right. Angles to the outside. 5. Revs the engine. Turns the corner. Touchdown Huskers. The Deuce did indeed get loose here in Vegas. The Huskers in front 13-7. 2:20 first quarter. Dampier faces a 4-man rush. Back in 2. Surveys the scene. Angles right, bobbing and weaving in a good pocket. Bullets over the middle in the end zone, caught for a touchdown. J.J. Buchanan Caught it right side of the end zone. Got the inside track on Justin Red. A 20-yard touchdown pass. Just too much time. Huskers didn't get after the quarterback. And Utah's a point after away from tying this game up at 14, 10:05 first half.
And I kind of watched that from start to finish. When you're man-to-man, you can't play peekaboo.
Coming into the game, we were really thinking a lot about the run game, obviously with the way we had played the run during the year, and we were spilling everything. And there wasn't a lot of big explosive runs. So I wasn't concerned with the effort. It was more just the execution. And some guys got banged up in the game. A lot of guys played in the game. And every dark time there's some silver linings. There's a lot of young players made some plays. Quinn Clark catches a fade down the left sideline. A bunch of young guys on defense played today. So it's kind of sort of learning some lessons by fire. But I didn't question the effort at all.
Welcome back to Reaction here on 1620 The Zone, 402-951-1620. Lot in those clips that Peter just played. One, that question was about physicality because Matt Rule had talked about how, the physicality against Penn State or Iowa wasn't where they needed to be. And so the question was, in this game, did you see better physicality? And he talked about effort. And at least on the defensive side, he made it sound like that he was fine with the way the physicality was for Nebraska. If you like using that word, you have to define the word, right? What are you talking about when you say physicality? Are you talking about, coming up and hitting people, winning the line of scrimmage, making plays in the open field, tackles, all of that? Nebraska was not the winner in the physicality. They had 13 missed tackles. I believe 8 of them was from the secondary. They did not win the line of scrimmage. They got their hands on the quarterback, I think, 3 times. 1 sack and 2 times where they touched him before he got away. There was one where, even on that play, that touchdown pass that Peter just played, the 20-yard, 3rd and 20, and he kind of moved around. Van Poppel almost got his left hand on him and then went by him as he was getting pushed by the guard. But that's as close as they got to the guy. Physically, they did not stand up. After the first 2 drives, they got a stop of Utah based off of Utah fumbling a toss and then having a false start. But that's it. After that, they pretty much couldn't stop Utah for 5 straight drives. Even though they forced a field goal, still getting points, and you're not getting points. They got out-yarded 535 to 343. That's part of physicality. But the real thing, when you talk about physicality, is who came out of the game with a bunch of hurt guys? That was Nebraska. Who was winded on a defensive line for much of the game? That was Nebraska players. Who failed to put up any stats from the defensive line? That was Nebraska players. The physicality on defense was not good enough. Despite what Matt Rule's talking about in effort, maybe he saw effort, but they weren't winning the battle of effort. The biggest concern, and we're going to get a little bit to the Utah game and a little bit more, but before that, I want some of the things that are concerning heading into, remember I said it's a huge 2 weeks and then a huge spring and all of that. And we're actually going to get a spring game this year, so that's good. But some of the issues that you have to be concerned with it. Yeah, Matt Rule doesn't have a problem going out and firing guys, right? He did it back at multiple stops. Of course, did it famously at Carolina, firing a guy in Joe Brady, who I've always been a big fan of. And if at one point Joe Brady wanted to coach in college and wanted to coach here as a head coach, I'd be fine with having him. I know not all Buffalo Bill fans love him as a play caller, but they're pretty short talent-wise right now at the skill positions outside of James Cook and when Kincaid is healthy and, Khalil Shakir. And anyway, he fired Joe Brady in the middle of the season in Carolina. He'll fire you. Here's the problem with that. He hired those people. So he evaluated and made a decision that I'm hiring these people because these guys are going to get the job done. Hey, Peter, can you look at there's a bite in there that says, what is it? What did I call it? It's a Rule soundbite where he's talking about all the coaches are going to be fine. They're all going to get the job done. But so you have to have confidence. The guys you're going to bring in.
Got it for you.
You got it? Okay. So this is the confidence you have to have whenever you hire guys and make them your coordinators and assistants.
I have no doubt that Rob is going to have us playing great defense. He knows what he wants. I have no doubt that in year 2 with Coach Eckler, that he's going to have us going where we want to go. I have no doubt that Jeep is going to have our offensive line being, a dominant group, and I have no doubt that Dana will get the thing where he wants it to be. So, but we have to get that work done.
Okay, so there's no doubt, right? I'm sure he had no doubt when he hired John Butler or promoted John Butler to be the defensive coordinator after 2 very successful seasons under Tony White. I'm sure he had no doubt about that. I'm sure he had no doubt when he made the move in midseason last year and brought in Dana Holgorsen and moved Satterfield just tight end coach. I'm sure he had no doubt then. He probably had no doubt when he kept Donnie Raiola. He probably had no doubt when he hired Terry Braden. All of that. He had no doubt then. But he hired all those guys. And outside of Dana, who hasn't been fired, and if he got fired, I'll go over some numbers and show you something. If he got fired based off of what he's done, it wouldn't be shocking. But he hired all those people. So, yeah, it's great that he's willing to fire them and move on and make changes, but he's the one that hired them. These are also the guys that evaluated the players they decided to pay money to out of the portal last year. So you may be hopeful that this group of personnel people, led by the commander of the U.S. Enterprise, Patrick Stewart, get it? Anyway, so he hopefully comes in here and does a better job of evaluating the guys they need to bring in. Look, Dane Key was a much better player at Kentucky. Is it because Dane Key wasn't good enough in the Big Ten? Was it because the quarterbacks weren't good enough that were throwing the ball? Was it the play calling wasn't good enough? I believe in Dane Key. I think Dane Key could be a very good wide receiver in the league. I think he's like a 5th-round pick who can stick around. But have you seen that? No. And Isaiah Hunter maybe exceeded the expectation for a lot of people. Then decided not to play in the bowl game. I believe it was a hand injury. We'll see what happens with that. He's not announced going in the portal, so hopefully that means he's staying around. Pritchett had his problems at Alabama. Wasn't a surprise. They basically said, we're going to take the chance on his potential. On the defensive line, they skimped. They brought in low-cost guys outside of Nwaneri, who really hadn't done anything as a true freshman. Nwaneri, everybody else was just a skimping. You were going to the discount aisle and you were saying, okay, this is how much money we have left. We're going to take a chance on this guy. And the same people, in terms of Matt Rule, that made decisions on those guys are still going to make the decisions on these next guys, along with Pat Stewart and others. So that scares you. And then out of all of that, take the players out, take the year 3 promise out, take out the portal, all of that. Still, in the end, a man who has struggled with game management is still the guy in charge. Matt Rule, for all the positive things he's done throughout his career as a coordinator, as a assistant coach and as a head coach, out of all those things, the one thing that he struggles with is game management. We've watched it. We've all seen it. Timeouts when they're being called. Decisions to go for it on 4th down. Overall game management during the game has been lacking. And adjustment. Do you realize, you probably know this already, but when trailing at halftime, a Matt Rule Nebraska team has yet to come back and win a game when trailing at halftime. And I did these numbers during the middle of the season, and I believe when tied, they're like 50-50. Excuse me. This is not a team that's made a whole bunch of adjustments and gotten better during games either. So when you factor in the game management problems, you factor in the adjustment issues, and that's the same guy, your biggest question heading into next year is Matt Rule up for the job? Now let me say this, and I was sitting down on on New Year's Day with some members of the media who were there to cover the Sugar Bowl. We're at a bar or a restaurant near Caesars, Harris Casino there, okay? So we're sitting there talking, and here is why I think, at least this is the way I feel, why we're all kind of cheering as media members that Matt Rule makes this work because he's easy to cover. It's that simple. He's easy to cover. He gives you things to write about, both bad and good. He will sit down and talk to you off the record about any number of things and be interesting. And in the end, he's like a good dude, and you just want him to do well. You know, as much as I love talking to Bo Pelini, especially when it came to talking about football, as much as I appreciated the winning that Nebraska had, Bo was a hard cover. Yes, he gave you things to write about, but they weren't always great. And he wasn't always, you know, willing to be open with you. He was a hard cover. Doesn't mean I thought he should have been fired right then. Actually, I thought he should have been fired for 2013. I didn't think he should be fired for 2014. I was a little bit back and forth with that. But it's funny. Sometimes you just cheer for someone or hope they're going to do well because it makes it easier on you. And I think that's where Matt Rule is locally. And not just with the media, with fans too. They're like, hey, this is a pretty good dude. You know, he's got a couple kids and he's got a wife that's very involved in stuff. And he seems to be liked by everybody. And yeah, you want that person to do well. So that's the first question. Is Matt Rule up for the job going forward? Question number 2, is this new coaching staff good enough and ready to compete in the Big Ten? And that is a huge question. If you ever get a little extra time, you're bored, go to the different web pages for Big Ten teams and just scroll through their coaches. I think you'll be surprised how many names you recognize. They have a lot of talent at the coordinator spots, the assistant spots, the analyst spots, a lot of talent. And a lot of those guys have experience in the Big Ten, whether playing there or coaching there. Is this coaching staff that Matt Rule is building, new defensive coordinator, new offensive line coach, one coming from the ACC, one coming from the Mountain West, soon to be, I believe, the new Pac-12. Are these guys, along with the rest of them, and whoever they bring in a defensive line coach, are they going to be good enough to compete in the Big Ten against some of the best coaches in the world? That's a big question in number 2. If we remember anything from the way Scott Frost's career started here, he decided to keep his entire coaching staff from the American and bring them into the Big Ten, and that was a bad decision. They were overwhelmed. They didn't know what to expect. It took a good year and a half, 2 years before, you know, Scott Frost said, wow, I quite know what to expect. They start making these changes because you're in a different league. You're in a different world than where you come from, right? And then number 3 is, can they get enough Jimmies and Joes to make a difference? Can they get enough on the offense and defensive line? Can they get somebody who you legitimately can say, and here's the thing about watching Nebraska games. Every game you watched, the opponent's team had somebody at the wide receiver or the tight end position that you said, oh, that dude's a playmaker. I don't care if it's Maryland or Northwestern or, you know, obviously they didn't play Rutgers. Rutgers has a Ian Strong. Everybody has somebody. Who was that guy that when they're making preparations to go against Nebraska's past offense, did they write down and go, okay, that guy? Who was it? I thought it should have been Lindenmeyer. I thought Lindenmeyer could have had a huge year. He didn't. I said earlier about what I thought about Dane Key. But anyway, who was that guy? They didn't have one. They got to have one of those guys. You got to have a playmaker on the outside. Again, everybody had one. It seemed, than Nebraska. Everybody else seemed to have one. Can you get enough Jimmies and Joes to where on the offensive line, when it comes to short yardage, you can be much better than you were this year? Matter of fact, I had a turning point spot in that game on Wednesday where I think part of it was a lack of confidence in Nebraska's offensive line. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll go over that. The turning point in that game against Utah, I think, goes back to a lack of confidence that the coaching staff and the offensive coaching staff had in Nebraska's offensive line. Severe Reaction brought to you by Equitable Bank, where we take banking personally, and by Nebraska Medicine. Join our team at nebraskamed.com/careers. We'll go over that turning point and how it reflects back to something that Nebraska struggled on all season when we come back here on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
A 28-yard field goal near right hash for Dylan Curtis. Orion Phillips to hold. The near right hash kick from left to right. Snap perfect. Kick is up. Clears the line end over end, and that one is good. So Utah has the lead. Ball far left hash. Husker 11. Two wide outside the numbers. Left single man right is Buchanan. Dampier shotgun set. Parker vacates out of the backfield left. Snap Dampier. Quarterback run as a seam up the middle. Accelerates 5 into the end zone. Touchdown. He was unchecked into the end zone. Dampier in the end zone for a second time today. And it's 23-14 Utah with 20 seconds left for the half.
Yeah, Nebraska going to bring a safety blitz. Got caught in zero coverage.
And both teams will run to their locker rooms. So 17 unanswered for Utah here in the Las Vegas Bowl. Huskers trail at the break by 10.
Well, it's not really their offense, it's their passing game, which is disappointing because we're stopping the run at a high level. We just got to make some plays in the back end. You know, they're winning the one-on-one matchups. We had Huron pick a ball off. I mean, we're capable of doing it. We just got to go do it.
What about offensively? You got off to a great start. How do you get rolling again offensively?
We're going to play with a little bit more tempo. They start just don't pressure us. Guys just have to make a play. I mean, at the end of the day, there's really no answers other than the guys just going out, trust themselves, making a play when a play is presented.
Welcome back to Severe Reaction here on 1620 The Zone. 402. No, yeah, 951-1620. I was watching Aaron Rodgers in the past, this game against Cleveland. I watched this game live because I had some stuff involved in it. And it's hilarious how – so the Steelers are a good team, but you see that offensive line occasionally and you go, oh, okay, I see why at the college level, if you have a couple weaknesses, because that's at the pro level where they're occasionally getting pushed around like that. Anyway, you heard on the highlights there were a couple touchdowns by Utah. And one of the things that really stood out in that game against Utah was Nebraska's ability or lack of ability to get off the field, right? So among the touchdowns, a 3rd and 20, that was after the grounding penalty, the intentional grounding. 3rd and 20, 20-yard pass, touchdown. 3rd and 9, 11-yard run, touchdown. 4th and 1, 5-yard run into the end zone, and 3rd and 7, a 17-yard passing touchdown. So those are 2 of them happened on 2nd down, but everything else was 3rd or 4th down. The lack of ability to either force a field goal or to get off the field was basically what cost Nebraska that game. I know Utah was the better team. I know Utah had better skill. I know Utah, even with the opt-outs they had, overall had a better team. As Matt Rule said, they were a top 15 team. We are not a top 15 team. He said we're not a bottom 15 team, but we're not a top 15 team. And that's, of course, true. But the turning point in this game goes back to something Nebraska struggled with really much all year. The issue to be able to convert in short yardage. Okay? So I know where the game ended up, 44-22, but the game's 14-7. Nebraska finally gets a stop, second chance. They get a stop against Utah. They had a fumble toss. They lost yardage. They had a false start. They lost yardage. So Nebraska gets a stop. They get the ball at the 27-yard line to start the second quarter. First play, -2 to Mosey. Missed the block. Tackle for loss. Then Latif threw one of his poorer passes of the game. It was just a quick check down. He overthrew Mosey. Probably could have gained 6 or 7 on that one, but nothing. So it's 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 12, somewhere in there. And they complete a pass to Dane Key to the 35-yard line. It's now 4th and 2. You've seen pretty much what Utah can do. You know what Utah can do. On the one drive, they went down and scored. You know this is going to be a game where you're going to have to outscore them. So at that point in 4th and 2, if you feel comfortable in short yardage, you go get that. Because it's a bowl game. You've got nothing to lose, essentially. Whether you win or lose that game, it really doesn't change your season that much. But still, Nebraska punts. I would have loved to see Nebraska try to get that. You've got a mobile quarterback. You saw what Utah did on some of those short yardages where they just let Dampier get it. You could have let Latif try to get it. You could have, what's your best 2-point conversion play? You run that. I don't care. That's a point where you don't want to give the ball back to them. But you do. You you punt, you give it back to them. Utah then has that intentional grounding on 2nd down. It becomes 3rd and 20. Nebraska has to call a timeout because, again, they don't have the right guys in it. And by the way, the play clock is not started yet. And Nebraska's got to call a timeout because they don't have the right guys in. They're trying to shuffle guys in and out. Again, a game management issue. So they call a timeout. Coming out of the timeout, you just prepared for 3rd and 20. It's 3rd and goal. So they can't get a first down. It's 3rd and goal from the 20. And coming out of the timeout, you have a 4-man rush. You get a little bit of pressure. You get Van Poppel pushed past him. They really don't get any pressure from the edge. And Dampier just moves around the pocket and makes a fairly easy 20-yard touchdown pass to the tight end. You had 4 rushing, 7 dropping, 1 person. Javin Wright was in the spy position. Everybody else is in coverage. You essentially have 6 versus 3. They did have a big tight end come out late after chipping, but you essentially have in the end zone 5 guys versus 3 to make a stop. And they couldn't. And they get a touchdown. That ties it. Makes it 14-14. And at that point, it wasn't over at that point, but that was one where Nebraska needed to stay ahead in order to be able to stay in that game. And by choosing to punt instead of trying to go for it there, based off of probably the doubts they had about short yardage over the season, they end up giving the ball back 14-14. Next thing you know, you look up and was it 31-14 at half, something like that. Let's go back to the phones, 402-951-1620. That's where Michael is this morning. Good morning, Michael. How are you doing?
Hey, Michael. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
I got a couple dumb questions.
Yeah.
First of all, why didn't Utah make the college football playoff? And second, whoever the bowl committee elects to go in these bowl games, do you think Nebraska should have played a team that was equal to them, equal in records? And have a good morning, Michael.
You too. Thanks a lot, Michael.
Happy New Year to you.
You too, sir. Yeah. So the last question just now is, that's a product of Nebraska's fan base, is why they went to Vegas. John makes the joke, Bishop makes the joke about going to Detroit. But anytime a place like Vegas, or if the Music City Bowl had an opportunity or whatever, to get Nebraska's fan base, to get 20, 25,000 people to go out to your place and not just contribute to the attendance, but also the nightlife and everything else that's happening in Vegas, that bowl committee is going to pick you. I have a good friend who is the president of the New Mexico Bowl, and when they're making those decisions, he wants people who are going to come from out of town, get hotel nights, spend money in the restaurants, go to the game, that kind of thing. That's why you want, and that's what Nebraska's issue is. It's not an issue. It's a good thing that the fans are willing to travel, but that's why they ended up against a team like Utah. Utah didn't get into the college ball playoff because Utah lost to BYU, and BYU was ahead of them in the pecking order. You had the Miami Notre Dame thing going back and forth because the ACC had huge problems with their tie breaking. They end up getting left out. If their tiebreaker was right, like some of the other conferences, and they just said, here's the team that's going for us, the highest ranked team in the college ball playoff, Miami goes in. And so you're not having to worry about have a second G6 team getting in. You don't have to worry about that. And then that kind of changes it. But Utah is never getting in because their loss to Texas Tech, and that's with a Dampier that was hurt, and then losing to BYU, who was already kind of ahead of them in the pecking order. So they weren't getting in. But I love that team coming into the season, the team that I picked to win. I thought they would win the Big 12. I also picked Dampier. I put a little money on him to win the Heisman because I was a big fan of him coming from New Mexico. But yeah, it was a mismatch, but that was based off of the fact that the Vegas people knew that they were going to get Nebraska fans in. One of the things I wanted to get to before this hour is over, and we talked to Steve Sipple at 9 o'clock, is I think if you listen to, this is a bunch of weeks ago, but John Bishop and I were doing the pregame show, 1620, the pregame, and we were talking about gimmicks. And for me, the word gimmick has a negative connotation, and for John, it doesn't. And I think if you're having to go for gimmicks, that usually means that you're not good enough. My best example for that is the pizza places out there that have cheese stuffed crust and or pepperoni stuffed crust. The reason why you're doing that is because your pizza's not good enough. If your pizza's good enough, you're not having to mess around with all that junk. You just make good pizza. If your football team is good enough, you're not messing around with gimmicks, right? And it seemed like for whatever reason, every time we looked up, every 6 months or so, Matt Rule had kind of a gimmick that he was putting into place that allowed Nebraska to get some social media clicks and attention. It was just something that was about what he was doing, Chasing Three and his podcast and all these things. I entitled the segment Big Words and Big Gimmicks, because that's kind of what this 3 years has been about, right? Initially, Matt Rule talked about, and he said this multiple times, we're going to be the most feared team in the Big Ten. At no point has that gotten to it. That's not happened. That has not happened. Believe it or not, that's not happened. He talked about winning the fourth quarter, out-rushing, outscoring, obviously winning the fourth quarter. That has not been, again, Nebraska a couple games, Maryland coming back and but winning the fourth quarter, being the most feared team in the Big Ten, no. Building and winning on the line of scrimmage. He talked about that. Whether it's a 3-3-5 or a four-man front or whatever, it didn't matter. We're going to build and win along the line of scrimmage. Never happened. Big words that never were fulfilled. And then the Chasing Three podcast, the Chasing Three videos, they were great and they're fun to watch, but it's kind of a gimmick. Starting a podcast, going on the McAfee show every Friday. And then the last gimmick is the Coach Rule thing, the backwards hat. And I'm sure, because for the most part, successful people have a true confidence in themselves, that Matt Rule believes these things are important and helps the team and him win. But in general, the backwards hat thing, I'm Coach Matt, comes across as kind of cheesy. It just does. Maybe the players thought it was cool. Maybe somebody in the administration thought it was cool. But, in the end, he's standing there on national TV with the team getting their asses kicked with a backwards hat on and a hoodie. This doesn't matter, but my mom's like, what are you doing? It's an 89-year-old woman. It's like, what are you doing? The former head of marketing over at Children's Hospital, who I've known for years, she's right. She's like, what is he doing with the backwards hat on? And I explained the whole thing about Coach Matt. She's like, that's just stupid. That's just, that's outsiders. You think nationally people were looking at that and going, oh, look at Nebraska's football program's got coach out there with a backwards hat. It just, again, it's a gimmick. And I'm not sure why Nebraska football, the, I believe now 7th or 8th winningest program in football history, is in need of gimmicks. I just don't think they are. There are too many gimmicks, too many big words unfulfilled, and too many gimmicks in these first 3 years. That's just me. You know, I'm old. I'm not as old, however, as our next old man Doug joining us here. Definitely not as old as him, but I'm old. What's up? What's up, Doug? How you doing?
Oh, I'm just out for my walk.
Oh, okay.
My cleansing walk.
Yes, sir.
I agree with you on the gimmick part. I kind of felt like there needs to be an exorcism or something of culture. And, you know, we got these gimmicks, we got all this stuff, and somewhere, somehow, somebody, and I would think it's Matt Rule, is not a good talent evaluator when it comes to character. And we don't have the kind of guys that are tough, willing to work through things. And I'm not saying we can do Indiana. That's tough. I get it. But we just seem to be recruiting the wrong guys, whether it's high school or in the portal. And not all of them, but a high enough percentage that this thing isn't working. It's not working. And you mean to tell me that we don't have an offensive lineman that is better than Turner Corcoran on one leg?
I know.
I mean, what about Grant Bricks? We parked a trailer, a Nebraska trailer in his hometown, tell him to come to Nebraska.
Right.
And that guy can't get a chance? Not a chance? I mean, it's
Doug, they're either saying they don't have a tackle good enough, or they don't have a guard good enough to be in replace of Tyler Kanak, right? Because Kanak moved out and Sled came in at right guard late. They honestly believed that Corcoran on the one leg with the hamstring and the bad knee was better than Tyler Kanak was at tackle and Sledge was at guard. That's scary to think about.
It is, and it's lack of development or lack of talent evaluation, one of the two or both.
Yeah.
And that game was just, God, I was pissed. And, you know, here we're talking about this Rhett guy from Georgia. And what was that coverage there, that first one where, I mean, literally we're 20 yards away from the receiver. And I can't put my finger on it, but it's just like we're in purgatory here. We just don't have it.
Yeah. The cover, when they're in cover 2 and the throw's made to the tight end because the safety gets sucked up on the run fake and then the corner doesn't get over in time. You're talking about that throw, the beginning of the game?
Yeah. And so there's obviously a reason why number 12 wasn't playing for Georgia, because of that kind of thing. They're just lost. And they were, we don't make tackles.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm sorry. I didn't think that 23 played a good game. He had his statistics showed a lot of tackles, but and again, maybe most of it's coaching, but it just seems like their eyes, their feet, they run so hard at somebody. All they have to do is make one move and they're past them. And at some point we got to coach better and recruit better.
Yeah. And
that's the portal too.
No doubt about that. Hey, old man Doug, we appreciate it. It's always next year, baby.
Happy New Year.
You too. We appreciate Doug. So I think he's talking about, and I'm pretty sure he's talking about Justin Redd, who's actually a Las Vegas native. He was kind of the person out there who was talked about a lot because he was from Vegas in that situation. He was talking about Caleb Billing, number 23. And I will tell you that, you know, I've watched Caleb for a long time, and obviously I have some bias, but, you know, not playing a lot in games is, you know, it's not easy if you don't get reps. But I thought for most of that game, there wasn't anybody hitting anybody hard until Caleb came in and had 2 or 3 different times where he hit people. I know one time was called a personal foul, which I didn't agree with, but he came in and actually was hitting people. Now, on the touchdown run by the quarterback, by Dampier, where they sent a blitz where they washed everybody inside. The only guy outside was Caleb Benning, and he got hit by the guard who was coming in motion. He can't cut that guy anymore. You have to get over the top. You got to get inside him, and I don't think anybody's getting inside of him there. So that was a situation where they called the right play for what Nebraska was calling, and that's why that was such an easy run in for Dampier. There was nothing that Caleb could do. Now, if you go through the game, there's always going to be things you're going to pick out where people struggled on certain plays, right? But I thought instinctually, Caleb did a good. There's one touchdown. Well, there's one pass to a tight end that went down the 1 yard line. Caleb is playing on he's middle to the boundary side, and they send the tight end in motion. He's got to come all the way across to come through and try to make that tackle. And he made the tackle at the help of Sierra Wright, but that situation was that's not good scheming if that's the guy who's got to come over and do that. It's just not. They played a lot of man-to-man. I'm a matchup guy personally. I love matchup, especially in the middle of the field, because it allows you to pass off. As long as you have good communication, it works really well. But I thought that for the fact that Caleb had not played really all game, I thought he played pretty well and flew around and played with an intensity to get and be in parts of a lot of tackles where there wasn't a ton of intensity, I thought, out there. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll have Stephen M. Sipple, and we'll talk about why this year will go down for a reason as one of the worst in Nebraska history. We come back here on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
Fourth down and 4, 26-yard line of Utah, most likely final play of the game. 2 wide each way. Shotgun snap, Latif. 4-man pressure. Latif steps up. Sends a wobbling spiral back run to the end zone. Batted down by Blake Cotton, incomplete. Ja'Cory Barney was in the area along with Cortez Mills. All zeros on the clock. And the Utah Utes have won the Las Vegas Bowl going away. After a fast start from Nebraska, all Utah from the second quarter on. Final score here from Allegiant Stadium. Utah 44 and Nebraska 22. With that first win for Morgan Scalley, does indeed get that official Gatorade bath. Final record for the 2025 season for the Huskers. They'll fall to 7-6, 3-game losing streak to end the year.
Oh, yeah. Peacemaker, season 2. Absolutely insane.
Did you like it?
Insane. I'm not done.
Oh, you're in it right now?
Right now. I'm 4 episodes in.
Oh.
It's insane.
It's wild.
Oh, my goodness. It's hour number 2, Severe Reaction. on 1620 Zone. We'll chat with Steven M. Sipple in just a minute. But I want to explain how the end of this season was in many ways historic and not in a good way. You may remember, let's go back in the time machine real quick. 1968, the last 3 games of that year were so bad for Nebraska football that Bob Devaney made changes to bring in a new OC and a first time, because they had never had a DC under him, and have a permanent DC, right? That's what happened. Tom Osborne, Monty Kiffin with some help. That was 68. Here's what happened at the end of the season. They got shut out by Kansas State, 12-0. They beat Colorado and then came back and lost to Oklahoma, 47-0. That was so bad that they had to make all kinds of changes because it was 1968 and you could not get shut out in 2 of your last 3 games. That's how bad that was. Nebraska didn't have another one of those final 3-game seasons as bad as 1968 till 2007, where they allowed 172 points in the last 3 games. They lost to Kansas, beat Kansas State, and lost to Colorado. All those games had more than 60 points scored by the winner. Think about that. Then you go to 2017, where they allowed 166 points in the last 3 games with losses to Minnesota, Penn State, and Iowa. Then you go to 2022. They lost the last 3 games, 104-49. And then 2025, 121-48. Penn State, Iowa, Utah. When you are historically bad, most times, if you look at these years, there was a coaching change or a dramatic change to where Bob Devaney brought in an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. He was so desperate to turn around 1968. What do you get after 2025? New defensive coordinator, new defensive line coach, new offensive line coach, but not a new offensive line or offensive coordinator. And maybe they need one. We'll talk about that now from Husker Online. He is the man, the columnist for the Stars, Steven M. Sipple. Happy New Year, Sip.
Oh, Happy New Year to you, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing pretty. I'm fired up because I understand why people are so angry about where they are. And I talked about this earlier in the show, Steve. I said they were promised certain things. And much like when you were a kid and Santa promised you something and you didn't get it on Christmas Day, you were sad and you were upset. They were promised a lot of things this season, and I don't think they got any of them. Do you agree with that?
What were they promised?
They were promised a year 3 bump. They were promised a year 2 with Dylan Raiola where he took a big jump. And they were promised that the portal decisions they made were going to be really positive and help them get over the hump.
Yeah, not much delivered on any of those 3 counts. The year 3 bump I always thought was promised. Is that promised by the media? Promised by Rule? Who's promising that?
Everybody, but Rule mentioned it at least 5 times. I went back where he mentioned it.
Yeah.
And he didn't downplay it. I asked him about it before the season started. I asked him about it I did an interview with him during the College World Series. And I said to him, talking about this year 3 bump puts a whole lot of pressure on you to actually do that. And he talked about how much he loved pressure and how it was a good thing to have. And he agreed with that. He understands the pressure. He talked about it a lot.
Yeah. Now, I don't disagree. But if you go back, which I wouldn't expect you to do, and read what I wrote, listen to what I said, I never bought into the year 3 bump. I thought there could be a year 3 bump, but not for the reasons that people laid out, because he did it at Temple, because he did it at Baylor, because I thought the situations were so much different.
You picked 9-3 with me, right?
Oh, I thought, in July, I started going. Yeah, I went to 9-3.
Yeah, that's a year 3 bump.
Yeah, well, I thought there would be a year 3 bump, but not for the reasons.
Okay.
Not because of Temple and Baylor,
Gotcha.
Not for the reasons that people would lay out.
Okay.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't feel horrible about the pick in the context of, they looked like they're going to be 7-2.
Yep. Right.
And then it just kind of blew up. Now, it really blew up, and that's why
That's why I hear the tone of your voice and the angst of the fan base. And there should be a lot. It's going to be a long off season. There was a big letdown. The only thing I would say, I mean, one way you could defend a rule right now is, I'm just looking over the grades now. All this portal stuff kind of had me in the last couple of days occupied.
Sure.
I'm looking at that game. So many young players. He's right. And they do play a lot of young guys. And those young guys, and there's, I'm not going to list them all because there's 20. They have to get better. I mean, they gotta. Those freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores, there has to be a bump.
Stephen M. Sipple joining us here on Severe Reaction. Sip, do you remember what the last thing was in the box when they opened it and everything flew out of the box and there was the last thing in it at the bottom of the box was hope? Do you remember that story about Pandora's box?
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to have hope, you have to have evidence, I believe, right? It's not faith, it's hope. So we know that Matt Rule is willing to fire people, but he also hired those people. We know they're going to go out and they're going to get guys in the portal. We've seen that before and hasn't necessarily worked great. And the bottom line is the game management has been crap the whole 3 years. And the same guys in charge of the game management. What is the hope for 2026?
Well, I just alluded to some of it. It is guys like Van Poppel. I just stay up front. I mean, because that's where it's got to start shifting, is up front.
Sure.
Van Poppel's a sophomore. Keona Davis is a sophomore. Petchak is a freshman.
Yep.
Lefatu played 29 snaps, his career high snaps in the bowl game. He's a sophomore. Winery's a redshirt freshman. Huffman's a redshirt freshman. Those guys on defense have to take a step. And then on the offensive line, if you got to get them back, you got to get Evans back and Pritchett back. You have a good start there, but then after that, you need some guys to step up. You might have to go into the portal to get some guys, but there's hope there, especially on the defensive line with those guys. All those guys are back. I mean, and some of them showed a degree of promise at times this year, but they got to take the next step. So
your hope is development then. That your hope is development.
Yeah, my hope is development. And then I just go back to, I don't know if people think of this, but the guys that Nebraska played in the backfield in the bowl game were a freshman quarterback, a freshman running back, Mosey, a redshirt freshman running back, and Mekhi Nelson, and a sophomore Ives. Those are all, that's youth. I mean, Quinn Clark is a redshirt freshman. Keelan Smith, same. Cortez Mills, same. Corey Barney's a sophomore. I mean, that's the hope, is that you did play a lot of young guys, and you got those guys, but it's incumbent on those guys to assess where they're at and then understand they gotta get much better.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we are friends, okay? And I'm going to say, my friend, what part of the development you've seen over these last 3 years gives you hope that all those names you said are going to get better?
Well, Emmett's a good example of a guy who got better. You can kind of pick and cherry pick a little bit in that discussion and find guys. And once you say that Justin Evans has progressed, he'd be a guy that if he said, I'm going in the portal, he'd be in the SEC starting somewhere.
Well, he also played really early on as a guard, and I think he was good early on as a guard. I don't know if I would throw development on him, because I don't think there was ever a point when we said to him, he's not really good. I mean, he started off and was good. Let's go with those names. I mean, Keona Davis, that you said earlier, took a step back this year. Van Poppel took a step back this year. After the first 4 or 5 games, Winery was not to be heard of again.
Right.
Petchak was great, but came in as a freshman playing well. Hopefully he gets better and doesn't go the other direction. Shavers was a regression candidate. I would say that the safety position in general was a regression position. Javin Wright's a guy that got better in his 19th year in the program. It's hard to search for guys where you can point to and say, I feel confident that these young players are going to take the step because we haven't necessarily seen players take the step. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy or whatever. It's weird. It's
I
weird.
mean, it's a good conversation. Hope. What are the reasons for hope? There's not. I mean, I'm not. I'm just kind of trying to play devil's advocate. I'm not sold on it. I am identifying something that's real, though.
Yeah.
And Nebraska did play a lot of young players.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's a form of hope. It's a jumbled mess.
It is a mess. Thank you. It is a mess. Yes.
Right.
I said it to you. I said that to you after week 8, and you said to me on text, "Why would I say that?" And
right.
I have not changed. It's still a mess.
Yeah. Sometimes. I mean, I use the term cloud of confusion. I often, as I ponder this stuff, it's just confusing. Some of it's confusing to me. The way he's operated, the things he says, the rules, what I'm talking about, like just throwing in that quick line after the game, in the post game, after the bowl game, where he said, I forced John Butler into a 3-3-5. It wasn't really a fit. I feel bad. I'm like, what? Wow. I want to say, wait a second. Like, why? Like, why did you do that? He hadn't ever said it in that those plain terms,
right.
So yeah, there's things I'm just like, sometimes it feels, and I'm not saying he's doing it, but sometimes it feels like he's throwing darts. It's just, I gotta hope it hits,
Yeah. I think this was you in one of the post games. I listened to so many driving back from New Orleans and stuff, but I think this was you that said it. You were kind of happy that they didn't get that last, score to make it look better. So he would have had to talk about actually the way it looked in the post game. That's very true. It's funny because if they get that last score, it looks better, but we know it wasn't better. But you want him to actually address why it was so bad, right?
I did say that because it would have been 40-30 or 40-29, right? And am I wrong? Yeah.
Yeah. They probably go for 2. If they make it, it's all of a sudden 44-30. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought that would have been an unfortunate occurrence because Rule's good. He's good at that podium, and he would sell that. Look, we just got beat by 14. I mean, by the number 15 team, we lost by 2 touchdowns, and we kept coming. We put pressure on him to the end, and I just been like, no, you really didn't. But he's good. He's good at that. He's very good at that podium. He's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, even in that loss, I thought he was good. You walk out of there and you don't feel good, but some of the stuff he says kind of makes sense. And but yeah, but I will say this: a lot of people aren't buying it anymore.
Yeah,
he's in for sort of a long off season.
Hey, and Sip, I want to assure you that don't be worried about the used car salesman because they know who they are and they know what they do. So they're not going to get upset when people are comparing. They're not. They know. I had a lot of friends who sold cars over the years. They know who they are and they know what they do. So don't worry. They're not going to be upset.
It's a little derogatory.
I know, but it's true though. It's like saying firemen are brave. I mean, yeah, we know that they are. So Sip, I asked 3 questions before we brought you on. Give me quick answers for them. Number one, it's kind of a big one. Is Matt Rule up for this job?
Up for this job?
Yep.
This
rebuilding. What did you call it? It's a restart. A reset. Reset. Thank you.
Yeah. Pulling them out of the muck. I give him a 40% chance.
Okay. Do you think this new and they haven't added a defensive line coach, but do you think the staff he put together is ready to compete with the Big Ten? Because there is a different element you have to be as a coach to compete in the Big Ten.
40% chance.
And then the last one is, do they need a new offensive coordinator?
No.
Why do you say no?
I mean, I still retain confidence in Holgorsen. Why?
Yeah.
Because of his resume, but I don't see a lot.
It's a long time ago though. It's like saying I used to be able to dunk. Yeah, I can't anymore. It's been a long time.
I know. You can hear my hesitancy and my inability to come up with a strong defense. I didn't see a lot of reasons this year. His script is good, and then it seems like he gets confused and grasps after the script. I don't. Now, some of that is the reason. Again, I hesitate a little bit is how much of it is just the lack of personnel.
Yeah. Huh. So last year they were 43rd in. This is opponent adjusted and everything. 43rd offensively in the country.
Mm-hmm.
This year they were 45th. Okay. In points per drive, net points per drive. Last year they were 45th. This year they're 76th. In net yards per play, last year they were 78th. This year they're 77th. Again, this is all opponent adjusted, right? Last year they were 32nd in net available yards. This year they were 67th. They've regressed or stayed the same in almost every single offensive stat. He had an entire season, and by the way, the numbers did go down with Latif, but they weren't great with Braioli either. So
what Dana's going to say, or what his agent's going to say, is, and Dana said, we're going to be 7-2. I mean, that was a very poignant moment for him at a podium where he said, you know, we're going to win that game. He felt they were going to win the game against USC,
sure,
and go to 7-2, and then probably 8-2. So that's his defense, I'm sure. And then, you know, he didn't. I mean, his defense would be, we went to a freshman quarterback.
Yeah. And how do you feel about that?
The defense or the quarterback?
The defense of, by using that, I hate to use the word excuse, but that excuse.
I think it's viable.
Yeah. Oh, hold on, baby. You said many times that we didn't give any kind of leeway to Bo Pelini in 2013 when he lost his 40 game starting quarterback.
We're talking about two different things.
I know.
Overall, hold on. We're talking about overall assessment of a head coach and the overall assessment of an OC.
Okay.
And yeah, for the head coach, yeah, you don't cut the head coach a lot of slack in that scenario. But when we're just trying to drill down on assessing an OC, yeah. I mean, he's a freshman.
Sure.
I mean, that's a freshman. He's a rookie, and he didn't look that ready to me. You know, he looked fine against UCLA in a perfect setting against a bad defense. But that was life gets real in this league when you're playing those traditional teams. I'd say traditional teams. Penn State's a traditional team,
right,
on the road and cold in November. That's what I always say that about. I mean, when I'm talking about Nebraska football, when I'm talking about Big Ten football in general, life gets real in November.
Yeah.
That's when it really gets real. That's. If I was gonna, I mean, there's probably a column there that judge a program in November. That's when you really judge it. And boy, you would counter with right now rules come up way short in that critical month.
Interesting,
really did.
That you say that. So, and I'm going to go November, December. Okay, because I think it's November, December. Mm-hmm. So Nebraska 4-10, right? November, December under Matt Rule. Northwestern 7-7. Iowa 10-5. Illinois 10-4. Minnesota's only one game under 500 at 7-8. If you want to find bad programs, right? Rutgers is what Nebraska is. Maryland's worse. Purdue's worse. Michigan State's where Nebraska is. They are right now in November, December, a bottom 5 program in the Big Ten.
It's a telling month. Thank you for this conversation because it probably is a column. Yeah. It's a telling month because it gets hard. It gets long. It tests that. When you talk about character, you talk about culture, it tests all guys, I've heard guys over. I mean, there's guys that don't want to play in the cold. They take themselves out of games. That's a bad sign. I mean, there's not. November is when you're playing for things. You know, there's a lot in that conversation. A lot of it to me is a strength and conditioning discussion, where a lot of your strength and conditioning, I would gear it toward November and December.
Yeah.
You know, we have to be strong at the end of the season. That's a trick. It's hard.
Yeah, when I looked,
it tells you a lot about everybody. It tells you about want to. It tells you about love for football. Do you love it? Do you really love it?
Yeah.
I mean, because you're going into the Iowa game, and it's a brutal day, and you're going to get hit, and you're going to be cold. How much do you love it? You know, that's November is really, really telling to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's really about depth and training.
Yeah,
depth, training, and as you were talking about, the want to.
Depth is a good. I'm glad you added depth.
Yeah,
test your depth. It really does.
Yeah, and that goes back to recruiting and how the decisions you make on if that player is good enough for you and how you develop them, and you know, and I'm looking through this list, and the teams that have offers in the month of November, December over these last 3 years. Obviously, Nebraska the first year went 0 for 4, but you know, Purdue has an offer and Maryland has an offer. It's really only the worst teams. You know, Wisconsin has an offer, and they've been pretty bad the last 3 years. You know, Northwestern doesn't have an offer. They're 7-7. They're 500 and a team that no one thinks is any good, but they've managed to survive November and December better than Nebraska has. You know,
tells you a lot about them. It does.
It is. They're a tough program, as you guys said. Real quick before I let you go, what do you think about Minchie? As I'm gonna do a breakdown of him in a little bit, but what do you think about if he's going to be the next quarterback in Nebraska, the backup from Notre Dame?
I'm going to listen to your breakdown. There's a lot to like there. I mean, he was a hair from winning that job at Notre Dame.
Yep.
He didn't win the job. His film looks good. He's smooth. He does give you. He's a throw first guy for sure. He's a pure throw first.
Better runner than Carr, the guy they decided on, which I think is kind of interesting. They took the guy, lesser runner, as their starter. It was interesting.
He can scoot out of there. He's a high-profile guy in high school and had good numbers. He was hurt in high school. He had missed 6 games his senior year, but he put up good numbers in high school and outside of Nashville, Hendersonville, Pope John Paul II. Demeanor is good, it looks like. The main thing, though, I pointed out in the column is he had to operate in a high-profile environment in a tough quarterback battle and got a lot of development time because he was taking a lot of reps.
Sure.
So he'll come in here well developed because they had to invest in him at a high level at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Because he was a play away every week during a tough season, during a very intense season. He had to be ready every game. All of that looks good to me. Now I get it. People are saying so Nebraska's going to get a backup. Great. Yeah, I mean it's a glass half full, glass half empty discussion.
And it happens. I mean, we've seen it before in the portal era, to where a guy who wasn't the full-time starter goes someplace and becomes the full-time starter and actually plays pretty well. So I mean, it's certainly a possibility. His goal has to be to become the most famous player from his high school. And right now he's got to beat Golden Tate. Golden Tate. That's the most famous. Yeah. So we'll see if
he has a chance. He'll have a chance, but he's got to come here and win the job, obviously.
Yes, of course. And they got to bring in more than one quarterback too, right? They got to bring in another guy, a development guy.
Yep, I think so. I mean, you don't have enough right now.
All right. Well, hey, follow all of this portal stuff. HuskerOnline.com doing a great job. They have a timeline thing of what's happening every day. Plus, they have the wants and who's coming in and visiting over the next few days. So follow all of that and follow Steve Sipple as well. Sip, we appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Michael. Take care.
All right, take it easy. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We're going to go over Kennedy Minchie. Just looking at his high school tape. That's all I got, really. Got a little bit of tape from a Purdue game and a Syracuse game that I watched as well. But we'll do that when we come back here. Of course, brought to you by Equitable Bank. We take banking personally, and Severe Reaction is brought to you by Nebraska Medicine. Join our team at nebraskamed.com/careers. Back on 1620 The Zone.
Straight eye, deep back Rodgers in a three-point stance. Snap handoff over right tackle, slithers through a minimal alleyway, and the pile gets pushed near the goal line. He's in. Touchdown. Utah, Nakari Rodgers in for the score. His 11th of the year. That's a team best. And Utah leads 30-14, 10-40 here in the third.
I don't think there's a gap. I really don't think there's a gap. I just think there's a couple little things that we need to fix, that I need to fix personally, so that we can improve and win those games.
We faced 3 top 15 probably teams, and we lost. So, I mean, yeah, we're not a top 15 team. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it doesn't mean we're a bottom 15 team. It just means we're not at the level of these guys right now. And so I have to take responsibility for that. We lost 6 games this year. 5 of them were to, ranked team. Penn State Penn State lost 30 guys for the bowl game, and they still won't beat Clemson. I mean, they were the preseason top 5 team. We're climbing, trying to get there. And, like I said, so we'll look at everything. We'll attack everything in the portal. We'll attack everything with our roster. We'll try to find ways to improve. That's I mean, to me, it's really black and white, isn't it? Hey, they're the 15 team in the country. They beat us. It was, we were able to hang with them early for a while. We're not able to do it the entire game yet. And that's where we have to improve. I would just say, we've been here for 3 years. For 2 years, we're really good on defense. We struggled this year. I take full responsibility for that. Okay. I hired John, who's a great coach, and just kind of forced him into something like, hey, stick with the 3-3-5 because we've been good at it. Really wasn't right his fit. We just said, that's not right. We parted ways. I feel bad for him. He's a great person. I wish him the absolute best. We brought in Rob. He's got a system. Say, Rob, put your system in. He knows the guys that he wants to go get for the system. He knows the guys that fit here for the system. We started it, and we didn't put in his system. We just did the kind of quarters the way we had done it early in the year. After Michigan, we didn't play quarters ever again. So it was a tough transition this last month, but at least gave us a head start.
Welcome back to a reaction here on 1620 The Zone, 402-951-1620. Sometimes Matt Rhule reminds me of this is a gambling analogy that you got to be there to understand. He's down to his last 75 cents. And instead of saying, I'm going to make this one bet on something that I know is going to win to at least double my money and then go from $1.50 to $3 to, he's going to take a wild swing at about 4 or 5 high-profile underdogs and hope to nail them all so he can make all his money back. That is not an insult. It's not even a criticism. There's 2 different ways to do things in life. There's the safe way of doing it, and there's I'm jumping out of a plane, I'm hoping this parachute opens. And that's where I think he is right now with what he has to do and where they are. Let's go before we get into Kennedy Minchey. By the way, the first thing that Kenny Minchey should do is change his name to Kennedy because it flows better. Kennedy Minchey flows better than Kenny Minchey. I'm a big person on the sound of your name as a quarterback because of the Terry Bradshaws and the Roger Staubachs of my childhood. Kennedy Minchey would be better. Let's go to the phones where Reg is this morning. Good morning, Reg. How are you?
Hey, Al, how you doing, man?
Good, man.
Man, this is Bob. You have a lot of good shows, but this is probably one of your best ones, man. Especially statistically, the way you plot things out, and people can't argue with those statistics. Good play on words with different world where you come from, man.
Yeah,
I like that.
Thank you.
I don't know if a lot of people caught that, but
probably not.
But and then I like the way you held Sipple accountable to some of his statements that he's made over the past years and past seasons. He says a lot of different things, and he kind of flows with where the flow goes, if you know what I mean. But he made a comment about the team being real young, right?
Yeah.
You can't really count on young players these days. You know why? Because they can leave. I mean, it's not like football that we grew up on where you get a player, he red shirts, get big, get in the weight room, and he stays loyal to the program. None of these kids are really loyal anymore. They take off and go wherever they want to go or wherever the dollar bills are. So I don't take that into account when I look at players. Okay, now
right.
All this is entertainment, L. NBA, NFL, college football. All of us is pure entertainment. This is not football and sports. it's not governmental policy where it's dictating your lifestyle, my taxes, the economy. It's not, and I'm not a political guy. I'm not in politics, but that's more important than entertainment, is what the point I'm trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is, like you said in the beginning, we're stuck with this dude. Can't fire him. Cannot fire him. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm under the notion of this. It's just entertainment. Look, you keep firing coaches till you find the right one. That's my, it's just entertainment at the end of the day. You keep cycling through them till you find a Google me coach. And you just keep looking until you find one. And here's the problem I have. Why extend the guy? Well, I mean, why? I want your opinion on this. Yeah. Why didn't Nebraska extend Rhule?
Why did they? I'll tell you this real quick. I never thought he was going to Penn State. I never thought Penn State was going to hire him. I never did. Maybe they actually believed that was something that they could not afford. They could not lose him. So they did something to where they didn't put necessarily more money on there, but they put more years. But that's all I can figure. They must have thought that Penn State really might hire him. I never believed, and I told everybody who asked me, I never thought he was going to Penn State.
Yeah. Yeah, well, see, look, and I'm going to leave you with this, man. Yeah. Great show. Glad you're on air, bro. It's not politics. It's just entertainment.
Yeah.
We just keep looking till you find the right man and stop extending them so you have to pay him big money. Love you, bro. Have a good year, bro.
All right, man. You too. Take it easy. Look, I will say this about so here in Nebraska, it is about the economy in a way, because when Nebraska wins, the state does better. When Nebraska wins, the city of Lincoln does better. When Nebraska wins, Husker Hounds and many other businesses do better. So here and in other places, it is really an important thing to happen, because if it doesn't, it truly affects the economy, the emotion, the lack of, the opposite of depression, the excitement of, the state and the cities and the fans. So it is entertainment, but man, it's serious entertainment here for a lot of people if it goes bad. We come back, we'll go over Kenny Minchey, what he's done so far, what he looks like on tape to me. We'll do that and look at some of the other portal guys as well. 402-951-1620 is the number. This is Severe Action on 1620 The Zone.
Fourth down and 1, Husker 5. Empty the backfield. Now Dampier was in the slot. He's back at his quarterback position. Two tight ends right. Motion Parker right to left. Snap, give up the middle. It's Dampier, just runs up the gut and dives headlong into the end zone, stretching that football in for 6. Hands went skyward from the near side official. Quarterback design run, and Dampier is in for a third time today, fighting off the ankle grasp of Justin Rhett, bouncing off Riley Van Poppel and stretching that football A final yard and a half for 6. The 18 right hash snap. Dampier backpedals in 3. Looks left. Wheel route left. Caught by Bentley. Breaks the tackle of Guthrie at the 5. Walks into the end zone. Touchdown. Utah breaks 40 today. 44-14. Bentley makes the catch on that little wheel route left side. Broke the tackle at the 5, and he was high stepping on in with 8:16 to go in the 4th. 17-yard connection for a score.
I definitely feel as though, like, it's just going to leave a bad taste in our mouth. You feel me? So I feel as though, like, we're just going to use that as motivation. We're going to go in every day thinking about these, the last 3 games, and every day we're just going to go in and we're going to work. The guys that are with us are the guys that are with us, and we're just going to try and put our best foot forward and, definitely grow from there.
I think we want to play great defense and play great special teams. We want to control the line of scrimmage on offense and, be explosive in the passing game. And, we ran the ball really well early today, but we were never quite able to hit, some of those plays. Like we ran a wheel route to Ja'Cory and we just weren't able to quite hit it. Or, we got pressure at times, I'll say this, like, guys like Turner Corcoran, man, that kid, like, he can barely walk. He just cares so much about being a Husker. I'm sure people are going to beat him up a little bit for a sack at the end or whatever. But, man, guys, I'm telling you, he's out there on a leg that most guys wouldn't play on, so, I love that group. And, but, we'll have a chance now to go back with Jeep, to go back with Dana and really kind of work through kind of where we want to get to. And, but yeah, we have a lot of work to do.
Welcome back to Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone, brought to you by Equitable Bank, where we take banking personally and answer the phone on the first ring, and brought to you by Nebraska Medicine. Join our team at nebraskamed.com/careers. The middle voice was Mekhi Nelson, if you're wondering who that was, talking about his first touchdown and getting out there also and, just getting ready. He wants to get bigger during the offseason. He wants to get ready for next year. So far, Nebraska has a number of visitors that are coming in out of the portal. One quarterback, Kenny Minchey, third-year sophomore, about 6'2", over 200 pounds, out of Notre Dame, lost a competitive battle against C.J. Carr, who, played well this year for Notre Dame. There were a couple times where I thought they could have used a more mobile quarterback in some games, but for the most part, he played pretty darn well. This is all based off of his high school tape and a little bit of that I watched playing against Syracuse in that blowout game that Notre Dame had. And really, when he came in, he just ran the ball. He didn't really throw the ball much in that game. But he's got a short and quick release, easy thrower. We know he has a big arm. Many of the highlights, he's got to move a little in the pocket so you can see his mobility and the ability to find a place to be able to throw the ball. There's some short rollouts when he was in high school. You saw them do it against Purdue once against Notre Dame. Throws really well on the run, gets his feet right when he is on the run, which I like. It was funny because one of the things that I thought Dylan Raiola did best was because his footwork in the pocket was never very good. It's why his deep balls weren't accurate, in my opinion. But when he got on the run, and it was sprint out or it was just he had to evade pressure, his footwork was better. And he actually threw the ball better when he was on the run because of his footwork. But anyway, this kid does a really good job with that. I like the fact that he climbs the pocket with his head up, looking to throw. As Steve said, he is not a runner per se. He's a guy that's mobility and he's a functional runner, but he's a guy that wants to throw the ball from the pocket. It's really hard to explain his release point, which is not overly important. I just like to compare other quarterbacks in terms of their release and what he has, because it's short, right? It's not elongated like some of the young guys have now, and it's kind of behind his ear, almost maybe like he was a pitcher when he was coming up. It's not 3/4. It's over the top for the most part. But he does a lot of good things in terms of the way he throws it. You could tell his arm is very strong. I would like at times, based off of what I saw just a high school tape, that he threw it with a little bit more zip. He's a placement guy, but when he has to, when he's not throwing flat-footed like he is for a lot of it, he can put a lot on it. You can see that. He's both hands on the ball when he's in the pocket, when he's moving, trained very well. You can always tell with the guys who are, taught, keep both hands on the ball when anybody's around you. If you're running, keep your hands, get it put away. He does a very good job with that. On a design run stuff, he doesn't mind contact. I see him run into some guys. Now, of course, in high school, he probably was one of the bigger and stronger guys out there. But, you can tell that he likes the contact. When he has to run, he will run. The one time when he really looks like someone I can compare him to is on the RPO stuff. You know, he does the belly and immediately comes up and gets rid of the ball quickly. Reminds me a little bit of Jordan Love from Green Bay. He does the same thing with the way he transfers from the RPO handoff to getting it back and out quickly. A little bit of Jordan Love, but not a perfect comparison at all. I certainly see what Notre Dame saw in him by watching his high school stuff. And the competition, as everybody says, with CJ Carr was really close. Now, Carr's a little bit bigger than him, and maybe that was part of it. Maybe they wanted a guy who ran less than Carr because Minchie was definitely a guy who was going to run more. So maybe that's what they wanted. And maybe it was kind of who CJ Carr is. You know, he's the grandson of two college football Hall of Famers, one being Lloyd Carr, the former coach at Michigan. His other grandfather was a player at Michigan and a college football Hall of Famer. His dad played at Michigan as a quarterback. So maybe that was part of it, was that when you grew up around football family and you grew up around football, maybe he thought that maybe he was more prepared for this job at Notre Dame. Maybe that's why Freeman picked him. I'm not sure. Minchie's the better runner, but again, maybe they wanted a guy who was more of a pocket guy in terms of who they ended up deciding on. Very, very similar guys other than the running part. But I'm excited to see if they bring him in. You definitely got a guy who can take off and get you yards when you need it. You got a guy who can move in the pocket, and he's not a little guy. You know, he's 6'2". He's solid. He's a big fella. Let's take a quick call before we take another break. Let's go to Brian. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Oh, not too bad, I guess. Hey, at least Nebraska basketball's good.
Yes, no doubt.
Yeah. Hey, I was listening to you guys. Pretty good points. But yeah, I mean, this is let's just face the fact this guy isn't going to turn it around. He's just grasping at straws, and probably not going to happen. So we're probably stuck with him for another 2 years. But yeah, I totally agree with those gimmicky thoughts that you had. That's a pretty good point. I thought that was pretty spot on. Some good points made.
I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. That's all I had.
All right. I appreciate it, Brian. Like I said, I understand why people are upset. I understand why people have anger. But in the end, this is who you're rolling with. The way the contract is set up, the way the money is set up, you've got to hope that the decisions he made in terms of who he brought in as his coaches, his OC, his DC, and the line coaches, for the most important assistants on the team, know what they're doing and can do it at a high level in the Big Ten. Got to have confidence that Pat Stewart and the personnel department are going to bring in the right guys. And the ones they pick are not as much as affordable as they are guys who are going to make a huge difference. I said this earlier. There needs to be a wide receiver who you can point to and say other teams are preparing for him. You got to have offensive linemen that you're not worried about having a guy on one leg out there who is obviously very brave and courageous, but shouldn't have been playing. You got to be able to develop the guys behind him to be able to play in that spot. And you got to have pass rushers, man. You cannot end the season with, 3.5 being your top pass rusher. You just can't. I remember at one point, at the end of the season, Iowa had 3 guys who were over, I think, 7 or 7.5. I mean, you just can't do that. You just got to have guys who can pressure the quarterback and impact the quarterback. If you don't affect the quarterback, you don't win. Not in this league. You got to affect the quarterback, not affecting the quarterback. We'll go over some more of the portal guys that are coming in. We come back here on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
Own 16, Mosey, single back right, make that Ives. 2 wide right, 1 man left. Snap to Latif, back to pass. 4-man pressure, under pressure and sack. Lance Holtzclaw got him back at the 6. Just beat Corcoran. We're on the left side of that Utah defense, and Latif goes down for a big loss. Back to the 7. 4th down, 13. Huskers will punt. 3rd down and 2 at the 7-yard line of Utah out of the timeout, out of the 2-minute timeout. Snap to Latif, fakes the give, runs left, curls the edge, 5, gets hit head over heels into the end zone. Touchdown, Huskers. Ball spotted between the hashes at the 3. 4 receivers right, 1 left. That's Clark. Empty set for Latif. Snap. 4-man rush. Looks left. Fades it. Back shoulder for Quinn Clark. Did he wrestle it away with a flag down? He caught it. 2-point conversion. Quinn Clark.
He's going to be a good one.
It should be defensive pass interference, so count
That's
the deuce.
interference. Defense. That penalty is declined. Results of the
He
try
is
to it.
uber talented. Just getting started.
44-22.
I mean, I learned a lot. I played against 4 really good football teams, so I learned a lot. I learned what I can do and what I can't do. So at the end of the day, I just learned a lot. I mean, it's going to be a big offseason. My approach to this offseason is going to be different. There's a lot of things I got to improve on. A couple of things I got to see defensively, pre and post snap. So a lot of things I got to improve on. So that's what this offseason will be for.
Welcome back. Sphere Reaction brought to you by Equitable Bank, where we take banking personally and answer the phone in the first ring, and brought to you by Nebraska Medicine. Join our team at nebraskamed.com/careers. The number 1 spot you put on the portal needs is quarterback, because obviously that's where it starts. But number 2 is defensive line and pass rush help for sure. I know a lot of people talk about, 4-2-5, 3-3-5. Oh, listen, man, the 4-2-5 is basically the 3-3-5 with a weak side defensive end who is a little bit bigger than the jack. Many times, though, will be standing up. No one always have his hand on the ground. It requires you to have a much more athletic run and hit guys at linebacker. They're very similar situations. They're very similar schemes. It's about a 10-pound difference in the weak side defensive end and the jack for the most part. You're still looking for a guy who's big, athletic, 6'5", 255, 250, somewhere in there. That's what you're looking for. And Nebraska does have 4 defensive line types scheduled to visit, all different positions. So Anthony Jones is kind of that weak side defensive end who's coming in from UCLA. He's played everywhere. He played at UCLA, Michigan State, Indiana, and Oregon. Think about that. That's incredible. 6'5", 265. You got Ryan Henderson, who is he's even more of the weak side defensive end, 6'3", 255. He's got a 1 year of eligibility. He's coming in out of San Diego State. Not a surprise. You're going to get some guys out of San Diego State. Then you have your real true defensive tackle / nose tackle, Horace Lockett, who's out of UCF, who has been kind of injured, only played 4 games last year, and then missed the whole season before that. 6'6", 355. Big guy in the middle to clog it all up. And then the last guy is kind of a 3 technique or 4-eye, Malcolm Alcorn Crowder, 6'6", 305. He played at Kansas State in 14 games. And so he's the other guy who's coming in right now at defensive line. Then you talk about offensive line. For your third need, they're bringing in 4 offensive linemen. Kid out of South Carolina, which is not a surprise because of the Manning coming in. But you have Trey Babalad out of South Carolina, Brendan Black out of Iowa State, Malachi Breland out of Memphis, and Markel Samuel out of Oklahoma State. 2 of those guys, I think, are guards, and 2 are most likely to be tackles. Only 1 wide receiver, which I had as the 4th spot. As we said earlier, you got to have somebody who's a dynamic playmaker. And I'm not saying that Quasi Gilmer is that guy. He actually caught his first touchdown pass last year versus Nebraska out of UCLA, but he's certainly a contributor, 50 catches last year. But that's the only wide receiver currently that has a confirmed visitor, and there's no confirmed running backs at this point. We'll take a look at the defensive side when we come back here. Take one more break here on Severe Reaction on 1620 The Zone.
Just want to give my thanks to everybody in the audience. Want to give a huge thanks. I've had the opportunity to meet the Sharp family and Amy, the entire family, and what an honor it is to be here in this seat, understand the weight behind it, and obviously you know what Greg has meant to this entire community, which is a very large one, and it is a honor. I can't say it enough. It is an honor and a privilege, and I absolutely love this place, and look forward to many Husker wins in the future.
Yeah, there's a ton of work that has to be done. And I think that work for us is I mean, and we began it long ago, right? I mean, I think in terms of like looking at the off season, looking at the Big Ten schedule, looking at the travel, we coming down the stretch of the year, we're pretty beat up. So how can we do things better? How can we do things differently? From sports science to medicine to strength training, we've been studying everything. And so, obviously the last 3 games make it hard to say a lot of things, but like, as I said to the guys, Henry Lutovsky said in the press conference yesterday, get to back-to-back bowl games. That is an accomplishment. I don't want to forget that for them, but to get over the hump, we have a lot to do. And so,
all right, welcome back to Severe Reaction here on 1620 The Zone, wrapping up the 2025 season. The bowl game, Las Vegas Bowl, losing 44-22 to Utah, and looking ahead to the portal and what's happening over the next couple of weeks. 4 linebackers, by the way, are and let me tell you something. Whether you're playing a 5-2, you're an Eagle, or you're playing a 3-3 stack, or you're playing a standard 4-3, or you're in an Okie front, or even, it doesn't matter, right? All it doesn't matter. Defense is an attitude. Defense is intensity. The system, great to have a name on it. Wonderful. It's wonderful for whoever. It's nice to be able to take a guy who is built to play the wide 9 and have him in a system where he's actually playing the wide 9. There's a guy named Brandon Graham who went to University of Michigan, got drafted in the NFL, and put into the wrong system. And many people after 2 years said, that guy's a bust. Philadelphia made an adjustment. He's still playing. Just came out of retirement and still playing. Maybe a fringe Hall of Famer because he played in the right system. I get that. But the reason why he's great is because of his preparation, his intensity, and how he plays the game. And that's what you have to find. 2 positions: linebacker, runners and hitters, safety, leader of the defense. You got to find those guys. You can't go out there with mediocre safety play, and you can't go out there with unathletic linebackers. You just can't do it. I think Watson Trent, for the level he was playing at before at Georgia Southern, was pretty darn good. A little overwhelmed at this level. Vincent Shavers, whether he was a little overweight or coming off injury or whatever else, never played like he played last year when we saw him first playing. And the safety position is just a mess for a lot of reasons. So linebackers, 4 guys they're talking about bringing in. Confirmed visitors: Dexter Foster, Oregon State; Owen Chambliss, San Diego State. Another one is Will Hawthorne, which Nebraska fans should know him. They recruited him. He's coming out of Iowa State. Excuse me. And then safety, which I just mentioned, is incredibly important. They've got 2 guys that are coming in, both from San Diego State. But there's another one out there in Boo Carter, who was a kickoff returner for Tennessee, also plays safety. He's a little undersized, but I think they also want to go out and find a guy. And I know Eckler wants to find some more guys who can return. And as much as you want Barney back there being electric, it'd be better if he's electric at wide receiver. You bring a guy like Boo Carter in, and he's going to give you some really good returns in the kickoff. So I could see him coming in as well. And so that's kind of the guys they got coming in over the next 3 or 4 days. It's going to be very busy. I mentioned this when I had Sipple on. The guys at Husker Online are doing a great job. The guys at the Omaha World Herald are tracking this stuff. Lincoln Journal Star folks, which kind of work with the Omaha World Herald, Rivals people, everybody's doing a great job of tracking this. It's important. And who you find and who you get here and who you can have play for you is an important part of making sure that the end of season numbers are better this year in 2026 opposed to the ones you had in 2025. This is going to be a tough schedule. We know that. Get the right people in place, get the right quarterback in place. Doesn't mean you can't win, 7, 8, 9 games. It's certainly a possibility. It's got to see it happen here. Thanks for everybody who joined us on the show all year long. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. I hope we're back next year doing Severe Reaction again. Have a great 2026, and we'll see you next year.